Hi guys! Thank you so much for joining this video today. And right now I have a portrait commission to do, and I thought it'd be fun to just make a little video and walk you guys through my process of painting portraits. Okay guys, let's get started. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to look at my reference image, which I have up on the TV, and I'm going to find my darkest darks. That's the first thing I'm going to do. Find darkest darks. And as you can see on my canvas, I've already gotten a basic sketch of the portrait. And you can see that I've already kind of mapped out some of my dark shapes, like right here, I've drawn in this shape, and that shape is in shadow. So I've already kind of suggested it, but now when I go back in with paint, I'm going to be a little bit more precise. So I'm going to start laying in my darks, and there's a real nice dark shape here on the side of her face. I'm going to lay that in. And I'm going to be sure to try to keep the proportions that I've already mapped out on the canvas. When I go back in with paint, I'm going to do my best to keep all the proportions the same. They will change some, but I'm going to do my best to keep them how they are. And you can always go back with paint, especially if you're using oil paint. It's very flexible. If you mess up on something, you can always go back, scrape it off, or just go right over it. And there's some dark shapes in her hair, which I'm just going to kind of suggest at this initial stage of the painting. Just kind of suggest it. She has some really pretty flowy hair. So I'm going to use my brush as an advantage and let the brush create the effect instead of going in and painting every little swirly and curl that I see in the hair. And later on in the video, you guys will see how I do that. In the picture, she is wearing this really nice blue bandana around her neck, and I'm seeing there's some really nice deep shadows in her neck area. And this is where the bandana is actually folding and creating these really nice dark shapes. There's this nice dark shape here on her neck and another dark shape here on her nose. This shadow on her nose, it actually goes up into her eye in this area because the glasses are casting a shadow onto her eyes as well. So the shadow right here into the nose, it's kind of all one shadow. It's the shadow casted by the glasses and the shadow that is cast by the tip of her nose, which would be this part of the shadow right here. And it's all kind of one shadow together. So if I don't know if that makes sense or not, but this nose shadow, it's here and the glasses start here and it goes up into the eye. You can kind of see it as just one big shadow just to simplify it. That's how I do it. It's always easiest for me to find my shadows and see them all as like big shapes. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm just looking for big dark shapes. There's a lot of shadow in the eyes. I'm going to go in and fill in the irises because that is a significant dark shape in this painting. When I fill in these pupils, it will also help me kind of reshape the eye because of that upper eyelid. So when I go in with this darker color for the pupils, I can use that color to kind of reshape the top of the eyelid. And I also want to make sure that my eyes are in line with each other. So by painting in the pupils, that will kind of help me see, if I have the eyes in the right placement. All right, that's not looking too bad. I'm going to obviously go back over this and further refine it. Right now, I'm just kind of like figuring out a puzzle, and I'm just starting to place things to see if they need to be changed or if they are good where they are. Even though I have this sketch underneath, I want to try to stick to the sketch as much as possible. But for me, I've always found that when I actually started painting, the proportions kind of would change. And I'm going to place these nose nostrils. Might be a little too dark. Have black nose nostrils. Lighten that up. So I'm just trying to align these nostrils. It looks like one is higher than the other. So I'm going to make this one a little higher. All right, so let's see. I've got a couple more dark shapes to do on this face. I'm gonna go ahead and do some of the outlines of the eyelids because there's really a lot of shadow in the eyes because the glasses are casting so much shadow onto the eyes. When I'm painting in these eyes, it's like very intense focus, especially when I'm trying to get the shape just right. And it's like super, super focused. And it's sometimes hard to talk and paint it at the same time, but I'm doing my best. Like this upper eyelid right here, it's like if I talk too much, it makes my hand jerk and I get paint outside of my line or I mess up the shape or something. So take some skills. To paint and talk, take some skills. I don't know if I have any other artists out there watching that could relate to this, but it's always really satisfying to me when you lay in something, you're trying to get the right shape, and you just lay it in once, and it's like, bam, the right shape. Especially with these eyes, when you're kind of drawing with the paint and trying to kind of map out the right shape of the eye, and it only takes one brush stroke, and it's like, wow, I made the right shape in one brush stroke. That's always super satisfying to me. Now, when your eyes are in shadow, the whites of the eyes, they do look dark. But something that I've kind of learned is that the whites of your eyes are not just straight white. They can be like a bluer white, or they can be a redder white, grayer white. It just depends on the environment that the person is in. And all of the color will kind of just be reflecting into the whites of the eyes. You want to tone the white down, and especially when the eyes are in shadow, the whites of the eyes are pretty dark when they're in shadow. For me personally, it was always a little bit hard to get the right darkness because I was using the white, and it was a little bit hard to judge if it was dark enough for the eyes. So what I like to do is I just lay down a color, and if it looks too white or if it's too bright, then I'll just go over and just kind of darken it slowly. And that's what I've done a lot when I paint the white parts of the eyes. If I make the white part kind of too light, like I don't know if you guys can see that in the camera, but right there I made it too light and it's actually darker than it is on my canvas. It's darker in the picture than it is on my canvas. So I want to darken that. So I'm going to just darken my mixture that I have on my palette and place it. And that looks better. I'm now going to put the shadow that the sunglasses are casting onto the face, and it's the outline of the glasses. Well, they're not sunglasses, but they're just glasses, and they're casting a shadow. The shadow in the picture that the sunglasses are casting, it's a really sharp shadow. The shadow has super hard edges. And I personally don't really like how that looks, even in the picture. So I'm actually going to make a softer shadow, and I think this will look better at the end when I finish the painting. I think overall it will look better, but you never know. It's an experiment. But I'm just going to soften it anyways, and we'll see how that looks at the end. You can actually see her eyebrow like right here, but I'm just going to paint over that for now. I'm going to go back and add that in later. I think it'll be easier to just paint over it for now and then add it in later. Have you guys ever done that before? Just paint it over something, add it in later. Kind of makes life easier. There's also the shadow on the left side of her cheek that I actually just noticed was there. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in too. This is more of a half tone than it is a shadow, but I just really like that green color that is under her neck right here. And I just want to capture it. Sometimes if you're painting and let's say you're working on your shadows and you see something outside the shadows that you just really like, sometimes it's best to go ahead and just capture it because you might forget about it later and not add it. Sometimes I've done that before. So when I see something that catches my eye like this green color down here, I like to just go ahead and capture it. You can actually see this green color in several places in her face. Here, here. I don't want to get too much off track, but I'm going to hold off on the green and let's start with the background. The background has some really nice darks. These are actually all trees back here, and there's some really beautiful dark greens. So I'm going to go ahead and start filling that in. And then once I fill that in, I have all of my really dark shapes completed. I'm going to keep this whole background really, really soft and kind of fuzzy because it's not my main subject, and I don't want it super defined and sharp because I want the portrait, I want the face to be my main subject. I want that to be the thing that you see. I want you to see the background, but I don't want it to be so sharp and defined that it kind of overthrows the face. So I'm just going to make this really, really kind of fuzzy and soft. Okay, so I pretty much have all my darks laid out on my canvas. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just kind of fill in the background and get that done first before I start going in and adding some more of my lights and my halftones to the face. So I'm going to start with those trees. I'm going to put in the lighter green leaves that you can see, and I'm going to make it fuzzy. So not super defined. Another way to kind of make your backgrounds kind of just disappear is to not paint really strong pops of color in the background. If you kind of mute your colors down for your backgrounds, that will kind of make it disappear and make it so that the background is not the first thing the viewer sees when they look at your painting. I used to take these online oil painting classes, and I remember we were painting still lifes, and my art teacher would always say to smooth out your table line, and that was just where the table was and the background met. And she'd always say, smooth out that line, smooth out the table line. And I also took some landscape painting classes, and I remember that teacher would always say the same thing to smooth out the horizon line. I don't know if it counts for every single thing you paint, but I am smoothing out this line back here where the trees meet the ground. And as you can see, it just creates a very soft look, which is what I want to go for with the background. I don't want it to be too hard. So I am smoothing out my horizon. I'm smoothing out my table line. And it just really blurs the background. And I think it looks a whole lot more pleasing, especially when I'm painting something like this. All right, time for the sky. Skies are always my favorite thing to paint when I'm painting landscapes. I don't know why, they're just super fun to paint. There are some sky holes, which are sky that shines through the trees and all the leaves, called sky holes. I think they're called sky holes. Sky holes, tree holes. I can't remember. I heard that from one of my online oil painting art teachers, and I think he'd call them sky holes. I'm not totally sure. But the sky that is peeking through the trees, all the leaves on the trees, it's like a really pretty turquoise blue color. I think that's really beautiful. So I want to capture that. Sky holes are always really fun to paint. It's really satisfying because usually you'll put in that first sky hole and you'll think, that doesn't look right. But then the more you put and the more you build up the sky holes, it actually looks like gaps in the leaves and you can see the sky beyond. I don't know, that's always happened to me. I'll start putting in the sky shining through the leaves and I'll put in a couple and it's like, that doesn't look right. But then you start building it, you start putting more, and it just kind of starts to come together. Especially if you stand back from your painting and you look at it, you'll see that it looks how it's supposed to look. That makes sense. I don't want to get too much into landscape techniques, but it's just really hard not to tell you guys about these things because if you add these things in your landscapes, these are things that if you add in the landscape, it will give the landscape a more realistic feeling. But let's finish up the sky and get back to this portrait. Okay, I've got my light color, and I'm just going to start placing this light color on the face, and I'm going to place it on the light side of the face. So I have my darks all throughout here, and I'm going to fill in this white space with my light skin tone. And her skin tone, there's a lot of red, there's a lot of variation. I'm going to try to keep it really simple by just using one color and then building up to the different variations. That's usually an easier technique to use instead of going in and trying to get every variation you see on the picture to the canvas. So skin, there's a lot of variation. You can have orange, red, greens, browns. So sometimes it's easier to just look at your picture and think, okay, what is the basic tone? What is the tone that I see most of? In this picture, the skin tone, she has a very pink skin tone. So I'm just going to kind of get a general idea of her skin tone, and I'm just going to place this pink skin tone on her face. Another way to put it is I want to have a simplified version of her face on my canvas. And a simplified version could look something like getting your darks down and your lights. So you have a face that has a dark side and a light side. So you paint your dark side and then you paint your light side. And that is a simplified version of what you see. And really, what we see, guys, is shadows and lights. If there was no light, everything would just be dark. You wouldn't see anything. And if everything was just light, there would be no depth. Nothing would look 3D. It'd just be flat and white. So I really love exploring that idea in my paintings. I like to try to communicate that idea. If you keep this idea in mind while you're painting, you most likely will be able to capture what you are seeing easier because what you see is an object that has a shadow side and a light side. And that is what's causing it to have depth and look like you can reach out and grab it. It's just something to keep in mind if you are painting. And it's an interesting idea, it's an interesting thought to explore while you're painting. I'm starting to put in some of these more saturated red tones that I see in her face. And I'm actually using a cooler red called alizarin crimson. And the reason I point this out is because there are two types of reds that I use for pretty much all my paintings, and that is cadmium red and alizarin crimson. To be honest, when I first started painting, I just couldn't figure out the difference between cadmium red and alizarin crimson. I knew that alizarin crimson was darker, but when I would paint and I would see a red tone, especially in a face, I couldn't tell if it was a red tone that was more cadmium red or more alizarin crimson. And what I've discovered, what I've learned is that alizarin crimson is a cooler red. It's a way cooler red. Cadmium red is more opaque and it's on the warmer side. It's not as cool. So basically, alizarin crimson, it has a little bit more blue in it than cadmium red does. Cadmium red is more warm. It has more yellow, browny kind of. So I'm just looking at I'm looking at this red color, these red tones that I'm seeing in her face. And I just wanted to point that out because I didn't know that when I started. And it took me some time before I figured out that alizarin crimson is a cooler red than cadmium red. And I can see that in her face right now. She has more alizarin crimson cool red than she does have cadmium red. And guys, this is really what painting is about. It's not about can you make the best painting that's better than any artist out there. It's about learning, experimenting, and really just doing it. You know, don't overthink it. Don't think about how bad you are. Cuz I mean, if you want to paint, you're going to make bad paintings. Not every painting is going to be something that you like. Now, it might be a painting that someone else might like. They might think it's beautiful. But, you know, there's a painting in a style for everyone. And I'm not going to make it sound all flowery and like you'll just do it, shut your brain off and paint or draw. It does take work. It is work to be able to get past feeling like you suck and just doing it. It's not as easy as it sounds. I'm not going to make it sound super easy because then I'd be lying. There is a level of difficulty that comes with just doing art in general. All right, guys, so look at this. I have gotten a very simple idea of her face down. Now I haven't filled out all the white spots on the face, But so far, I've got a very simple and basic painting of her face. And that's what I want to accomplish in the beginning stage of the painting before I start to refine it. And I'm going to go ahead and fill in her hair and fill in the blue shirt she has on before I do any more to the face. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I am not going to go in and paint every little curl and strand of hair that I see on her head. I am going to let the brush do all the work for me, and I am going to use the brush in a way that I can suggest every strand of hair and suggest every curl, because going in and painting every strand and every little curl is too much work. At the end, I will go in with a smaller brush and I will add in the most prominent strands and curls that I see, but I will not paint every little strand. And this can really save you a lot of time, is just letting the brush do the work for you. It's that easy. As I was painting this, I noticed these really beautiful light blue sheens that she has in her hair. You can especially see it right here in this area. I just noticed that, and it's actually quite beautiful. And I think that's from the sky reflecting onto her hair, because she has really light hair. And the sky is actually reflecting onto the hair and just creating a really beautiful blue sheen. I definitely want to add that in the painting. That will add a lot of interest and character to the painting. All right, now I'm gonna do the shirt. The shirt is this really pretty blue color, and she has this really pretty blue bandana around her neck, and I'm gonna clean my palette with this. It's a blade, it's sharp, and I used to always clean my palette with a palette knife, and I found that it was a little difficult when the paint had dried on my palette, and then I had to scrape it off with a palette knife. It was more than a little bit difficult. It was pretty difficult. So then I found out about this thing, this blade, and it just scrapes the paint off completely clean. It's so much easier to use than a palette knife, so I just always use these. Okay guys, look, what I'm doing here for the bandana is I'm scrubbing the paint in more than I am applying paint. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I want to create a thin layer of paint on her bandana. And the reason why I want to create a thin layer of paint is because the bandana has these white patterns on it. And I want to be able to go back and add those white patterns without the paint blending so much to the point I can't get crisp white lines. I've always kind of had the tendency when doing portraits is to just kind of scrub in the clothes and be like, it's good enough. And I would just focus all my attention on the face, just scrub in the clothes, be like, it's good enough. But it's you really don't want to take shortcuts. You really want to try to make everything in the painting look the best you can get it to look. So for these clothes, I mean, there's darker folds in her shirt right here. I'm gonna add that in because, that's just gonna add even more depth to the painting. I don't want to just keep it as one flat shape, because the clothes have depth too, and you don't want to leave that out. There's a little bit of skin showing here that is actually quite beautiful because it's differentiating between the blue scarf she has on and the blue shirt she has on. And it's actually clarifying that those two blue shapes are separate pieces of clothing. See how nicely that looks? That just differentiates and you can tell, oh, that's a scarf and this is a shirt. It's just it's just very satisfying. If you guys don't know, I am currently traveling around New Mexico and I'm creating a collection of New Mexico paintings. I just finished up painting number 4. So if you guys want to go check out those videos, be sure to go on my channel and check them out. Okay guys, now I'm starting to add some halftones here, which is the tone between the shadow and the light. And this is just softening the shadow, especially here on the neck. And it's just making the shadow look softer. You don't want all your shadows to have real hard edges. I've made that bottom lip look really big. I am going to fix that before it gets too out of hand. We're a little tricky. Let's move on to the eyes. I see that my eyes might be a little wonky. This one looks like it's a little too slanted. Let's go ahead and fix it. I'm just gonna go back in with my darker color and just kind of reshape that eye. I'm really trying to be as delicate as I possibly can with these eyes because you can't really see into the eyes because she's squinting and there's so much shadow in the eyes that it's a little bit hard to tell. It's a little bit hard to make sense of it because of the shadow of the glasses falling on the face. So really what I'm trying to do right now is just make it look like it makes sense. Or you can look at it and know what it is and it doesn't look confusing. One thing that I did very differently with this portrait commission is I did not tone my canvas. So if you guys watch my videos, you'll see that I usually put a very light wash over the canvas before I actually start applying paint. And this is usually like an orangey color or a gray color that I just wash the canvas with before I paint. But this time I didn't do that. And I'm not completely sure. I think I'm liking the way my paintings are turning out when I don't put a wash over the canvas. I don't know, it's an experiment. This is probably the second one I've done without that wash, and it's turned out pretty good. What's different about it is the colors just look different on a white canvas than they do on a toned canvas. And these are the colors on a white canvas. I kind of like them better to be honest, but I'll keep experimenting with it and see kind of what looks good and what doesn't look good. Now I'm just slowly reshaping these eyes. I'm just going back and forth with lights and darks and trying to get her eyes the right shape. This is probably the most time consuming part of my painting process because you have to go back and forth, and just keep reshaping all the features in the face. Sometimes you can just put the paint down and get the shape right away. Like with with the nose, I got that pretty fast, but the eyes and the lips, it's taking a little bit more time, just going back, reshaping it. And at the same time, I'm building up layers of paint and I'm building up highlights and shadows, which is creating even more form. Okay guys, just to keep this video short and simple, I'm going to go ahead and speed up the process. If you'd like to see how this painting turns out at the end, just keep watching and you'll get to see a time lapse of me finishing up this painting. Okay, guys, here is my finished product. I feel pretty satisfied with how this commission came out, and I'm really glad that I was able to show you guys a little bit of my process and share with you some tips that I use when painting portraits. I hope that you can use these tips in your own paintings, and maybe it will even help make the process of painting easier for you. If any of you guys out there who is watching right now is not interested in painting, but you are interested in getting a custom painting done, feel free to reach out to me. I'll have my web address in the description below, and you can go on my website, check out some more of my work, and my phone number is right on my website. You can contact me directly, or you can reach out through any of my social media. So if any of you guys are interested in custom paintings, I'd love to chat with you and get to know your ideas. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and thank you to everyone who stuck to the end to see how this painting turned out. I hope all of you guys have a really awesome day, and always remember to stay creative.